She is the Children's Commissioner, Anne Longfield, and today she gives her final speech as she leaves that post with a challenge to the Prime Minister to show he is serious about children by putting them at the heart of his post-COVID plans. Anne Longfield, good morning to you. Good morning. Can you hear us okay, Anne?
Yes, I can.
Lovely,
yeah.
great. Thank you very much. And great to be joined by you. You have been, frankly, I would say, and I think my listeners would agree with me, a valiant defender and champion of children's rights, particularly over the last very, very, very difficult year where children have basically been asked to sacrifice for the sake of an older generation. What, in terms of the final message you want to give to the Prime Minister and to the government, what is it you want them to do?
Well, I think there's two things here. One is clearly putting children at the forefront for this next phase and building back. And that means really looking at how children have suffered during this pandemic and helping them catch up to where they should have been at this point in their lives. But there's something which is bigger than that, which is about the opportunity which is before them, which is the better part of the build back. And there's been a number of children who haven't shared that same progress in the nation's kind of support that other children have. And that amounts to about 1 in 5 children. This is a moment, I think, where actually the government can commit to that group, can put the support in place and help those children thrive. And that's something that not only those children will benefit from, but actually we as a society will.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Even if we're talking about huge costs of money in terms of channeling resources and efforts into these children's needs, it pays for itself in terms of children being engaged in education, being healthier, being happier, being better educated, better opportunities, less likely to end up in crime, on drugs, alcoholism, family breakdown, on the dole. I mean, on every single metric. This pays for itself.
It does. I mean, on a very basic level, the IFS have said that the actual learning loss and wage loss accounts for about 350 billion pounds from the lockdown alone for children. But actually, it's beyond that, as you say, with the draw on the public purse in terms of the kind of reliance on services over the future. If we can set children up for life now, at this absolutely crucial stage of their development, then they enter adulthood more able to progress, more able to succeed, and less likely to be needing to get that costly support later on in life.
Well, indeed. I mean, it's interesting. You in your speech, you're also going to reflect on how many in Whitehall who make the big decisions about spending, about resources, about priorities. How many of them have actually how they view the children that you're talking about, the children at the bottom of the pile.
Well, this is not trying to be a kind of reflection of individuals, because, there's some great people here working and doing their very best. But, it is a big government institution, and those people don't have access to children's lives when they're making decisions about gangs and about individuals with complex mental health problems. Often there are individuals who don't understand that lived experience of what it means for children and how those kind of vulnerabilities combine. That's a really strong focus of it. So I believe that the Prime Minister wants to build back better, but I think he'll need to change the way that government operates to enable it to do so for children. And that means getting out of the silos of departments that talk about institutions for children's lives and into one that actually can focus on how children progress. And importantly with that, a cabinet minister for children at the table.
Yeah, and another key issue here is, of course, is kids at the bottom of the pile socioeconomically in every other way who have lost out the most during the lockdown. And we know, I mean, look, I've bored on about this a million times. I've got a kid getting Zoom lessons all day. She's at a good school. We've got a happy family. We've got no hit to our income. Well, lucky old us. But there are millions and millions of families, not, it would appear, those who are working in the civil service or on SAGE or in the cabinet, who have been massively affected by that. And we know that it's the children who were already, on the free school meals, the most disadvantaged, living in, in tower blocks, parents perhaps not in work or in very low paid work, who have lost out the most during this. And there just seems to be this idea that just even speaking up for those children, which you've valiantly done for the last year, seems to somehow go, well, don't you care about the people who are dying, Anne? Don't you care about the people dying of COVID? But the thing is, it is possible to care about both, and to think that, as awful and tragic as it is that people are dying of this horrible virus, that doesn't mean we can ignore the plight of the millions of children who are also being hurt to an extreme extent for the rest of their lives.
I think what we've seen over the last year is the pandemic has shone such a stark spotlight on the children who have and the children who haven't. From the start, children, as you say, on Zoom lessons with parents at home, compared to those that were sharing devices and borrowing their mum's broken phone. Yeah. Parents having to go out to work, living in very cramped conditions, not having the tech. Those are all the realities of life. It's really shown the difference in resources that so many families have between those that have plenty to draw on at time of crisis, no matter how bad it is, but also those that have very little. Yeah. And at this point, we as a country can only flourish if we help those children who have very little to draw on. And there's some very practical things that can be done as a country around, getting a better security net for those families, helping those families get stable work, helping those children with their mental health and progress in school. It is within the gift of the PM to do this, but it has to have political will behind it.
Absolutely. I mean, two of the best things you can do for kids, actually three. I was going to do one is parents having jobs. That's really, really good for kids. The outcomes for children whose parents have jobs are much better than those without. Families staying together and helping people to do that. And the other is children getting a good education, so they've got a chance to actually make choices for themselves more than perhaps the choices their parents have had. We've taken two of those key three things away from children this last year. If there was one policy change that could be made right now, would it be for you to reopen the schools completely and get kids back in?
Well, reopening schools is really important, and I've pushed for that the whole time and would really want to see them open on March the 8th. But reopening schools is just the start. The rest of the recovery package then needs to come on. And what I'd like to see is the country offering an almost COVID covenant to children over the next few years that they would help them thrive, get over the pandemic, but also thrive in life for all children. And I think that's what we should remember, not what we took away from children, but what we gave them back.